So what if the main reason you struggle with confidence isn't actually that you think too little of yourself, but, that you're constantly trying to win a court case in front of a jury that just doesn't even exist?
Right, an imaginary jury.
Yeah. Like, we spend so much mental energy presenting evidence, calling witnesses, building these elaborate defense strategies for basically every choice we make. And it's all for this imaginary audience that is, frankly, too busy worrying about their own lives to even pay attention to ours.
Oh, absolutely. Everyone's running their own imaginary trials in their heads.
Exactly. And that exhausting, just never-ending trial is what we're dismantling today. We are designing this deep dive specifically for you, the listener, as you take your first intentional steps on your confidence journey.
Which is such an exciting place to be,
It
honestly.
really is. And, usually to tackle a subject as massive as human confidence, we'd be sorting through like heavy stacks of psychological research papers or behavioral case studies, maybe some dense neurological data.
Oh yeah, usually the desk is just covered in studies.
Right. But the source material you brought us today is it's literally 9 words long. It's this tiny excerpt from a piece called The Purpose of Self-Pride. And the text just reads, "Make yourself proud. That's enough reason."
Which, I mean, initially it feels almost absurdly simple, right?
Yeah, kind of like, wait, that's it?
Exactly. When you're looking for this comprehensive guide to completely rewire how you view yourself, being handed 2 short sentences feels like walking into a massive architectural firm, asking for the blueprints to a skyscraper, and they just hand you a sticky note.
A sticky note. Yes, exactly.
But instead of seeing that brevity as a lack of information, we really should treat it like a dense mathematical formula or, a line of fundamental psychological code.
Yeah.
Because those 9 words actually contain a complete closed loop system for generating intrinsic motivation.
Yeah, okay. A closed loop system.
Yeah. But to understand how it actually works, we have to look at the mechanical failure of how most of us try to build confidence today.
Right. And I definitely want to look at that mechanical failure because, if we don't understand why the old system is broken, we're not going to understand why this little 9-word formula is supposed to fix it.
Precisely. You have to see the cracks in the foundation first.
So if the goal is to feel secure in who we are, why is our default setting always to look outward? Like, why are we biologically wired to care so much about making other people proud before we ever even think about ourselves?
Well, it really just comes down to evolutionary biology and the mechanics of tribal survival.
Okay, so we're going way back.
Way back, for the vast majority of human history, your physical survival depended entirely on the approval of your immediate social group. I mean, if the tribe decided you were valuable, you got a share of the food, you got the protection of the fire.
Right, you stayed alive.
Exactly. But if the tribe disapproved of you, if you were perceived as, weird or uncooperative or just a burden, you were exiled.
And exile essentially meant,
Starvation, or being eaten by a predator, literal death. So your brain evolved to treat external validation not as this nice-to-have luxury, but as a literal life-or-death survival metric.
oh,
Yeah, the neurochemical reward system in your brain, it releases dopamine and serotonin when people applaud you. And conversely, it triggers deep anxiety and massive cortisol spikes when you sense social disapproval.
so we are essentially walking around in, modern office buildings and grocery stores with brains that are just terrified of being thrown out of the cave.
That is the perfect way to put it, yeah.
Like we're hijacking modern decisions, like what career to pursue or who to date or even just what clothes to wear with these prehistoric survival fears.
Right, and that leads us to the core issue with external validation. It relies on a constantly shifting social consensus.
Because the tribe's opinion changes.
Constantly. If you base your confidence on public approval, your brain's reward center is chained to an unpredictable, totally uncontrollable variable. The crowd's standards change daily.
Oh, for sure. What your parents value might be completely different from what your boss values.
Which is different, again, from what society or, social media values. When you try to mold yourself to fit all of those conflicting expectations, you experience what we call the paradox of pleasing.
The paradox of pleasing. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because that sounds like the exact trap someone starting a confidence journey falls into.
Oh, it's the ultimate trap. The paradox is that the harder you try to make others proud by adapting to their expectations, the less authentic you actually become.
Because you're constantly shape-shifting.
Exactly. And the less authentic you become, the less you trust yourself. Confidence is fundamentally self-trust.
Right.
You cannot build self-trust if you are constantly betraying your own instincts just to satisfy the crowd. You end up feeling deeply insecure, even if everyone around you is applauding.
Because deep down, you know they're applauding a character you're playing, not the real you.
Spot on. You know it's a performance.
Which brings us directly to the active command in the first half of our source text. Make yourself proud.
Yeah.
The pivot.
By shifting the focal point from the crowd to yourself, you're taking that external, unpredictable variable and replacing it with a fixed internal metric. But the word that really jumps out to me here isn't just yourself. It's the word make.
The action word.
Yeah, because confidence is so often sold to us as this like magical trait. People talk about it like it's a genetic lottery. Like you either have brown eyes or blue eyes. You're either naturally confident or you just aren't.
Which is a massive misconception, a really damaging one, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
The word make tells us that confidence is a byproduct of manufacturing. It is an action. It's not an inheritance. You have to physically and mentally take steps that yield pride.
So you have to do the work.
You do. When you shift to self-pride, you are taking control of the dopamine loop. Instead of waiting for someone else to validate you, you set a personal standard.
Like, what would be a good example?
Well, maybe it's speaking up in a meeting, or enforcing a boundary with a friend, or even just going for a run when you said you would. And when you hit that standard, you generate your own neurochemical reward.
Oh, I love that. We're completely changing the physics of the system.
How do you mean?
Well, relying on external validation is like having your house plugged into the city's power grid.
Yeah.
You know, it's great when the weather is fine, but if a storm rolls in or public opinion shifts
Yeah.
or you lose your job, the city cuts the power and you're left completely in the dark.
Yeah.
You have no control over the current.
That's a great analogy.
Right. But shifting your focus to making yourself proud is basically the psychological equivalent of installing a solar grid on your roof.
Yes, that functional shift is vital. You are decentralizing your power source. You are generating the current yourself. And, a mechanism of generating that current involves paying very close attention to your own values.
Which takes practice.
It does. But for someone starting their confidence journey, the realization that they can close the circuit, that the action and the reward can both happen internally without requiring a third party, that is usually the exact moment the lights actually come on.
But, taking control of that power grid requires a pretty massive behavioral shift, which leads us straight into the second sentence of the text.
That's enough reason.
Yeah. If the first sentence, make yourself proud, is the action, the second sentence, that's enough reason, is the defense mechanism. And here's where it gets really interesting, because accepting personal pride as enough reason feels incredibly abrasive to how society operates.
Oh, it's highly rebellious.
It is. We are totally conditioned to provide receipts for everything we do. It's like you need a permission slip.
We really are. The psychological mechanism at play here is decision paralysis, and it's fueled by this deep fear of being perceived as unreasonable. When we make a choice that breaks from the tribe's expectations, our prehistoric brain just panics. It goes into overdrive. So we try to soothe that panic by gathering external justifications.
We build these massive portfolios of logic.
Exactly. We say things like, I am quitting my job, but here is a spreadsheet proving it makes financial sense. And here are 3 articles showing my new industry is growing. Oh, and here is a quote from an expert validating my choice.
We offer up all these data points hoping the world will sign off on our decision.
Hoping the jury will acquit us.
Yes. We're trying to prove to the imaginary jury that we aren't crazy so they won't, exile us from the village.
But that's exactly where the purpose of self-pride acts as a circuit breaker for that entire cycle. By stating, that's enough reason, it boldly claims that personal pride is a complete sentence.
It's like having a VIP all-access pass to your own life where you never have to explain to the bouncer why you belong there.
I love that, yes. If the only reason you are making a massive life pivot, or even just a tiny daily choice, is because it aligns with your internal standard and generates self-respect, you do not owe the jury a spreadsheet.
You really don't.
Furthermore, treating your own pride as a sufficient standalone justification actually forces you to become highly disciplined about your choices.
Wait, really? How does it make you disciplined?
Oh, when you strip away all the financial, social, and practical excuses you normally hide behind, you're left looking directly at your true motives. If you can't say, I am doing this because it makes me proud of who I am, then you have to seriously question why you are doing it at all.
Oh, wow. That's a really high bar. But, so what does this all mean when we put it into practice? Because I hear that, but treating it makes me proud as the ultimate, unquestionable justification sounds like? Well, a potential recipe for a massive ego trip.
Ah, I see where you're going with this.
Right. If we're trying to establish a reliable framework for a beginner's confidence journey, we really have to look at the dark side of this algorithm. Because imagine a ruthless CEO who, I don't know, destroys a competitor's business, fires half the staff, and then just stands there and says, well, winning this corporate war made me proud of myself, and according to this formula, that's enough reason.
Right.
That isn't confidence, that's toxic arrogance.
Yeah.
So where is the mechanical line between authentic self-pride and pure, unadulterated selfishness?
This raises such an important question. That distinction is really the linchpin of this entire philosophy, and it all comes back to the mechanics of how the validation is measured.
Okay.
Arrogance and ego are not forms of internal validation. They are actually extreme forms of external validation in disguise.
Wait, really? Walk us through how that works. Because an arrogant person seems like the ultimate example of someone who only cares about themselves.
It definitely looks that way on the surface. But look at the metrics an arrogant person uses. Arrogance inherently requires comparison. Think about it. The toxic CEO feels proud because they crushed a competitor, because they are richer than someone else or more powerful than someone else.
Their entire sense of pride is dependent on a hierarchy.
Exactly. They need an audience to dominate. If you put that CEO on a deserted island with no one to compete against and no one to impress, their sense of pride instantly evaporates.
Because there's no one left to beat.
Right. Their power grid is still plugged into the city. They just happen to be hoarding all the electricity.
Ah, that makes so much sense. So the metric of success for arrogance is still entirely located outside the self. It requires external variables, other people's money, other people's failure, other people's submission, just to function.
Precisely. Authentic self-pride, on the other hand, operates on a completely different mechanism. It is entirely non-comparative.
Non-comparative, I like that.
It is deeply rooted in alignment with your personal core values and your integrity. It's the pride you feel when you keep a quiet promise to yourself that literally no one else knew about.
Oh, that's powerful.
Or it's the pride of showing compassion in a really difficult moment. Or trying a new skill and failing, but knowing you had the courage to at least attempt it. None of those actions require someone else to lose for you to win.
Because true self-pride is a solitary endeavor.
Yes. In fact, a person operating from authentic self-pride is usually remarkably quiet and grounded because they have completely stepped off the comparative scoreboard.
Wow. That reframes the entire concept for me.
Yeah.
True self-pride doesn't need an audience, and it doesn't need an opponent.
Not at all.
So for the listener who is using this deep dive as the starting line for their confidence journey, how do we translate this from a dense psychological theory into a practical Tuesday morning practice?
For daily application.
Yeah. If confidence is manufactured, what does the assembly line actually look like?
Well, the assembly line really starts with micro audits of your daily friction points. Confidence isn't built by suddenly making a massive, fearless leap.
Right. It's not jumping out of an airplane.
No, it's built by accumulating evidence of your own integrity. Small pieces of evidence. I always recommend starting with the places where you feel a sense of dread or resentment.
Resentment. Why resentment?
Because resentment is usually a highly accurate indicator that you are acting to make an external jury proud rather than yourself.
Oh, man. That hits close to home. Give me a practical example of how that plays out.
Okay, let's say you have a habit of saying yes to taking on extra projects at work, even when you are just totally exhausted. And you feel resentful every single time you do it.
I think a lot of people listening are nodding their heads right now.
Probably. The old mechanism, the external validation loop, tells you to say yes because you need the boss to think you're a team player. You are terrified of the tribe disapproving.
Terrified of being kicked out of the cave.
Exactly. But to apply the new formula, you pause before answering, and you ask the litmus test question. Will saying yes to this make me genuinely proud of myself?
And if the honest answer is no, it will make me feel like a pushover who doesn't respect my own health boundaries. Then the action changes.
Exactly. The action becomes saying a polite professional no. And the moment you enforce that boundary, you will feel a hit of internal pride. Your brain registers that you protected your own values.
You generated your own dopamine.
Yes. And the justification for saying no isn't this long, panic explanation about your workload. The justification, whether you say it out loud to the boss or just quietly to yourself, is simply that protecting your bandwidth maintains your self-respect.
That is enough reason.
That is enough reason.
It fundamentally changes your posture in the world.
Mm,
You stop walking into rooms looking for evidence that you belong there, and you start walking into rooms with your own internal standard already set.
it really does.
It reminds me of the paradox we discussed earlier. When you start bleeding all of your mental energy into performing for the imaginary courtroom, you suddenly have this massive surplus of energy to invest in actually getting better at whatever it is you do.
Which is exactly why people who operate from a place of self-pride are often the most competent people in the room. They aren't distracted by the
They
optics.
aren't checking the scoreboard.
Right. If they make a mistake, they don't spiral into shame wondering what the crowd thinks. They analyze the mistake objectively because correcting it aligns with their internal value of growth. The feedback loop is clean. There is no static from external opinions.
It's brilliant. I mean, we started this discussion looking at just 9 words. Make yourself proud. That's enough reason. It seemed like an impossibly small amount of code to rewrite a human operating system.
A sticky note for a skyscraper.
Exactly. But as we've decoded the mechanisms behind it, we found a robust blueprint for replacing prehistoric survival fears with an intentional self-generating power grid.
But it requires acknowledging that the jury you've been performing for is a phantom. The moment you clear the courtroom and accept that your own internal standard is the highest authority in your life, you are no longer trying to acquire confidence. You are simply practicing it.
Practicing it. I love that. Well, as we wrap up this deep dive into your custom source material, I want to leave you, the listener, with a functional challenge, a way to put this formula to the test in the real world.
I think they're ready for it.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Tomorrow morning, open up your calendar and look at your schedule. Look at the meetings, the social obligations, the tasks. Run the micro-audit.
Yes.
If you were to strip away every single action that is being driven entirely by the fear of external judgment or the desperate need to win an imaginary court case, what would actually be left on the page?
It's a sobering question.
It really is. And in that newly cleared space, what is the very first action you will choose to take, armed with the knowledge that making yourself proud is the only permission you will ever need? Thank you for letting us explore this foundational text with you. We wish you immense success as you continue to build your confidence, one internal victory at a time.